You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I'll tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are headed home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. That poem is Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. And I wanted to first start by congratulating all of you that are here in what you've done in the past year, on what it took for you to even begin. All the organizers, all of the inspirers, all the allies, all the members, Joe, everyone that's come together to do this kind of work. Because what I know is when women come together, the world heals a little more. When women come together, the world heals a little more, and the world needs a lot of healing. So really, thank you so much for your work, and thank you for this opportunity to think about the best advice ever. So I'm south of Boston, so we say it the best advice ever. So what would be the best advice ever? So I started thinking, I've gotten a lot of advice in my life. My family, clean your room, and some of the other ones that Alia was saying. Um, Colleagues, bosses. My first boss said, "You're only as good as your people." I was like, "That's a good one. I could share that one." And then I thought about all the other places I've gotten advice from artists. Paintings can give you advice, from authors, from books, from your horoscope, um, from speakers, from workshops. There's a lot of advice, some of it really good in the rear view mirror, and some of the advice exactly um, what you need if you choose to do it. And I'm loving these stories of the brave women here that are telling their stories about actually finding advice and putting it into motion for themselves. So I, like Dima in the beginning, have whittled my advice that I learned down into a little mantra. You know how I like those 6-word things. So my advice is that I received, that I'd say it's the best advice I've ever received, in 6 words, is put a poem on your heart. Put a poem on your heart. Um, a few years ago, maybe 9, 10 years ago, I wasn't sure where I was going, kind of in between things, and poetry found me, literally. Poetry kind of chased me down. And in that, I read a book called Saved by a Poem. I can show you the book. And it's written by a woman, Kim Rosen. And Kim wrote this book and tells her story of how she was in a really bad place in her life. She had lost a whole bunch of money. She had been swindled on Wall Street, and all her money was gone. And she was ill, and she was deeply, deeply depressed. And so she's in her apartment, and what she did when she got deeply, deeply depressed is that she would clean. So she's cleaning, and this is her office and home that she's cleaning, and she finds a cassette tape I don't know if you remember cassette tapes, but there are cassette tapes, and you put them in cassette players. And so she picked up this cassette that fell out of nowhere into her life and put it in a player, and there was someone delivering a poem to her, and it transformed her life. And she went on to write the book Saved by a Poem and to explain the process of doing it. And so in the process of putting a poem on your heart, notice it's not memorizing a poem, it's putting a poem on your heart. I met Kim, and I'd studied with her for a couple of years. And the first step is to select that poem. What poem do you want to take a journey with? What poem kind of calls to you? And in the process of putting this poem on your heart, you get kind of intimate with the conversation, like the words that you tell yourself, the words in the poem, and what the poem says, and what the meaning, and where to breathe, and where to release, and where to be curious about where it's going. So, in the process of putting a poem on your heart, Kim had asked me to do, I found a poem that I had heard about recommended to somebody else. They were very unhappy with the work they were doing, and they were scared to go on a new path. They were afraid that where they really wanted to go wasn't going to work out, and so they needed to stay where they were. And they said they were exhausted, and this person said to them, the antidote for exhaustion is not rest. The antidote for exhaustion is wholeheartedness. And then gave them this poem to learn. And this poem is The Swan by Rilke. And it talks about a swan when it's on land and it walks, and it's very awkward because that's not what swans do, right? But when it's in its elemental waters, how beautiful it looks. Well, I was at a point in my life when I was meeting Kim and selecting my poem that I was starting my own business, and I was doing some things that I didn't have a lot of support for. And I live on Oldham Pond, and I looked out and there was a swan there. And I kept thinking about this poem, and I took it to heart. I'll share it with you. Uh, this clumsy living that moves lumbering as if in ropes through what is not done reminds us of the awkward way a swan walks. And to die, which is the letting go of the ground we stand on and cling to every day, is like the swan as she nervously sets herself down into the water, which receives her gaily and flows joyfully under and after her, while the swan, unmoving and marvelously calm, is pleased to be carried, each moment growing more like a queen, further and further on. And I took that poem to heart because I am the swan. When I'm out of water and it's awkward and I have too much to do and I don't know how to get it done, I look for the place where it's my elemental waters. And when I took that poem to heart, that part where it says, unmoving and marvelously calm. Oh my goodness, I could not say that. It came out unmoving, marvelously calm, because that's what I do. And pleased to be carried? Heck no. Nobody, I am not pleased to be carried. I will tell you to carry me. I will show you how to best carry. Pleased to be carried. And in the process of learning that poem, it was transforming and healing something in me about accepting who I am and accepting my grace and living my life. And the swan can be a badass if it wants to be, and it can float with grace. And so as I learned to breathe, unmoving and marvelously calm, and as I let myself be carried by where my life was going, knowing that I had the strength, it made such a difference. So when I say that poetry has the opportunity to transform your life, to heal, it's true because words matter. You matter. And as women, we're doing a lot to heal the world, and we need to heal ourselves. And so I want to offer to you the opportunity, if you need a poem, if you'd like to carry it on your heart, I am happy to show you the way. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I'll tell you of mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the deep trees and rivers and the mountains. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are headed home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers to you, to your imagination, calls to you like wild geese, harsh and exciting, announcing your place in the family of things. Thank you so much for letting me do that.